Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. Back with another Fact Friday. Thank you ever so much for watching. Please hit the like button if you like the video, share it, comment, leave more Fact Friday questions here. And of course you can go to Produce Like a Pro and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. I've written many songs and have some good recordings of them. How do I go about selling these songs for artists to perform and perhaps use on their albums? This is a whole video on its own. Here's a really good question. Oh, I'm so afraid to open this can of worms. Okay, this is a question I get asked all the time, and we will do a video specifically on this. The reality is it's very, very hard to sell songs, to get artists to cover them, no matter who you are. I can tell you that I did an album with for Epic maybe about 4 years ago for somebody who won a talent show. And we went to one of my favorite writers, and I'm not going to say who it is just because this guy is a massive writer and subsequently has written a worldwide, literally a worldwide #1 smash. So those of you who know me well know exactly who it is. He co-wrote a song with the singer that was the biggest song of that year. This was a couple of years before. He'd already had tons and tons and tons of success. And he gave us like 3, 4, or 5 songs. And I cut 3 of them, I believe. And the singer, the artist, didn't want to put them out. Didn't want to do co-writes, only wanted to write themselves. I'm not going to say who it was. It caused a bit of a rift because at that point in their career, they weren't as good of a writer. I'm not saying they're not going to be a good writer now, but they were coming straight off of a winning a competition, having not written at that level just yet. And they needed to get in a room and experience it. So this would have been a wonderful way for the artist to blossom and come out with something. And this writer, like I say, is one of the best writers in the world and is also a credible artist in their own right and has written beautiful songs of their own. And we had a couple of songs, one in particular that, this is the point, it's like, even in situations where you've got record companies, publishing companies, great writers and stuff, you still come up against brick walls. It's really, really difficult to pitch songs, especially at the highest level. If you're asking me, and I know that's what you want to know, can you get a good song in front of somebody? Maybe. The problem is it's not only got to be good. It's not only got to be really good. It's got to be unfreaking deniable. It can't be like, because lots of people say to me, oh, I've got tons of songs which are just as good as the other album tracks. Sure, what's the incentive of an artist to cut one of your album tracks? It's got to be a #1 surefire smash hit. It's got to be so undeniable that you play it to your friends and they go, oh my goodness, this is incredible, this is a hit. Do you have a song like that? Do you have a song that you play to your friends and they're like, oh, they're in tears going, wow, this reminds me of when I heard Hey Jude for the first time. I mean, when I personally heard Hey Jude, I was like, where's this song been my whole life? Do you have a song like that? If you do, trust me, it will get cut. You will find a way. You can send it to tons of different people. You can you can cover it your own self and put it up there and people will find it. They will. That's how things get found because it's so freaking undeniable. Now, is it a really, really good song? Yes, then good luck. There are so many really good songs out there, but undeniable smash hits are undeniable smash hits. Great, amazing album tracks are great, amazing album tracks. Artists write that themselves or they write that with a co-writer who has a proven track record. There is no reason why a #1 selling artist in the world would come to me to use one of my album tracks for their album, but they might write with me. So, how do you get started? Co-write, co-write, co-write. Write with so many people. Write with local artists, write with anybody you can and build your community. Build a community of writers and producers around yourself. Surround yourself with other talented people and grow from that. And you will build a career. It's a long, hard slog. It's not an overnight thing, but and once again, surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. But it's really hard, really, really hard to get a track on somebody's album with They didn't co-write it. So we did a Fact Friday, probably a couple of Fact Fridays ago recently, where we talked about companies, and specifically we were focusing on Summer NAMM, and AMS Neve had shown us the new Genesis software and how they were incorporating hybrid mixing. And I love that because so many of us grew up on hardware, and so many of us love the ability of using tactile equipment, and we love the feel of that stuff. And I totally understand why so many of you still use hardware. And I don't want it to go away, and I don't know if it will ever entirely go away, but obviously digital is getting better and better and better. So the Neve Genesis was a great thing to talk about. So here is another explanation of that same question. And I'm going to use it as an opportunity to showcase Tegeler Audio, who have this amazing compressor. Warren, I see many of your videos are either in the box when you're streaming or hybrid when you're breaking down the mixes. Which is it? Which do you prefer? It's really a variation of the other question. I honestly like working in a tactile environment. I also like not being at a screen. When we're at the screen here, often I'm on headphones, often well, not as often anymore, but the smaller speakers. I've been embracing headphone technology and how we like the sonar works. We've really enjoyed the Waves Abbey Road Studio 3 software. So now I can be a little bit more in front of the computer screen. However, honestly, there's nothing better than just doing this. Just turning around, hearing me talk out my back here, and just being between a pair of speakers and reaching for a fader. It's not like I sit here writing faders all day, writing in tons of automation and stuff like that. I do that, but not as much. These days, the world of hybrid is a combination of both of those environments. Many guys and girls who work in a hybrid environment print SSL tracks back into their DAWs and then work in the box, but have used the EQ and compression and dynamics of the console. That happens a lot, and it makes recallability really easy because you can just open up a session and have all of your printed tracks in there. Very smart indeed. But what I do love is the ability of many, many guys and girls like Wes Audio. We'll give them a shout out. They got nominated this year for a Tech Award. We're one of the first people to talk about them. Of course, the Neve Genesis. There's lots of great companies. Please leave more below. But of course, our good friends at Tegeler Audio, who also have that software. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show you something that we did just inside of our masterclass. It's quite long, but it will show you what this particular compressor can do. We're big fans of this company. They're not paying us to do this. He came down and gave a presentation because we asked him to, and we were in Berlin, and they're a company based in Berlin. So let's check it out.
I'm Michael from Tegeler Audio Manufaktur, and I'm here to explain you a little bit about my products and also give you a course about different compression types and different compressors, how they work, and something behind the scenes, how to engineer it in electronical engineer. I will go through all this without audio because it's not so easy to have it set up in 1 minute to explain it correctly. So I will go through it, tell you everything. If you have a question, just stop me, ask me. I will try to answer that. And after that, we can run some audio through it and actually test what we have heard before. Okay? Okay, so the first thing is here on top, we have the compressor called Schwerkraftmaschine. It's a variable compressor, and we put everything in we had in knowledge, and I actually wanted to have a compressor that has some digital part in it. The character of the compressor is defined by the audio path, if there are tubes in it, transformers, chips or whatever, and obviously this is a tube compressor and it cannot change the sound. But then also what defines the compression is how the compressor reacts, how it reacts on the input signal and in which way it works. And then I came up with the idea to put a processor in, a digital processor to not be bound to what the electronic gives you, but to have freedom to program it in different ways and compression in different ways. Then after that, and while we're developing this, we thought, okay, we already control everything in the compressor, so why not have motorized pods on it and remote control it? And then we added a feature which is now the most impressive one because it's so obvious, and it comes with a plugin, and here it's connected by Wi-Fi, and you can run this plugin in your DAW and change in the plugin. You can see the knobs moving. And you can use everything like in a real plugin, or it is a real plugin. You can use it to make automations. You can save presets. You can save everything when or it's automatically saved with your song. But it's actually just the byproduct of what I'm explaining now. The name is German and it means gravity machine. Schwer means heavy, Kraft means force, and Schwerkraft is gravity and machine is self-explaining. That's the audio path of a typical tube compressor. You have your transformers, then you have the tube that is regulating the level. So your compression tube, then you have an interstage transformer, output tube, output transformer. The audio signal will be analyzed here, and the control voltage to control the compression will be generated here in that analog circuit. And depending on what you use here, what electronic components, what values that they have, that defines the sound of the compression. And as I said before, you have two different things. The parts here in that audio path decide how the compressor will sound. Obviously, tube compressor will not sound very clean, but that's something we want to have, and that part defines how the compression works. So in the Schwerkraftmaschine, we exchanged that part with something digital. The audio signal will be analyzed, will be converted to digital. Then there's a processor running a software back to analog and controlling the tube. So the audio path is still the same. It's nothing digital in the audio path. It's pure analog, but the magic comes in here. So with some software, we can change the character of the compressor. So the magic comes in with this mode knob. You see it changing, and also changing the modes in the display. And with that knob, you can choose different software running in the processor, and it changes how the sidechain will react. The first one, it's the most complex one. It's called multiband complex. As you saw here, the audio path is not splitted into different frequency ranges. So it cannot be that. What we can only change is the software here in the CPU. And that's what we did. So the audio signal is splitted in two different frequency ranges in the sidechain. Then some compression curves are applied, and also the timing is applied. And then it gives back three different control voltages. They are summed and sent to the tube. And since this is all done in the sidechain, of course the audio signal is not splitted in three different things, but doing that way will sound 95% the same as with a multiband compressor, surprisingly. With the low frequencies, the timing is slower, and also the knee is more softer. With high frequencies, the knee is harder and the timing is faster. And with the timing, you have this attack and release knob here. I'm just moving them. You set the timing for all three bands, but they change relative to each other. And why have slower timing for bass? It's when you have a really fast timing for bass, then you can have it really fast to make distortion and to cut in the waveform. So that's why it's good to have it slower for bass and faster for high frequency signals. High frequency signals you can compress harder and faster. Typically it's the hi-hat and other stuff like that. And yeah, at the end you come up with something that sounds like a multiband without the without the cons of a multiband. So there's no frequency splitting, no phase problems at that range, and it works quite well. So, of course, it will not replace a real multiband compressor, but for having it in that box, it's a nice feature. The next one is called diode pressor, and that's also one of the things, of an emulation of something existing. And I can show you a picture now.
3369.
And that's the famous diode compressor. And also we had to do some simplification because it has many knobs, and as you can see, it has a limiting section and also a compression section. And we were not able to put this all in the controls, and we it wasn't our purpose to put all the different controls in there. We could have made more knobs on the Schwerkraft machine, but the thing is to keep it really simple. The thing is, it has two sections, limit and compression, and we managed it to have, that's the compression ratio, the diagram of the compression ratio. You have your knee point, here the compression sets in, and then you have a point where the limiting is coming in, and that's 6 dB apart. So you have, when you apply it to audio, it first compresses, and then when something really loud is coming, some transients that go through or whatever, then it will start compressing at a certain point. You can see the uncompressed and also the compressed signal, and you also see that there are transients coming through still, and it's not the purpose of that thing to really limit. And because it's an analog gear, we still have the same problems with timing. So it cannot be ultimately fast because you cannot rewind, or if you have a time machine, of course you can look ahead and know what you're doing. So still transients coming through, but it captures the compression sounds of the.
Is there a way to delay the signal in an analog world that won't affect it?
An analog, yeah, but it will degrade audio quality. You have this bucket brigade delays, and you know it from playing guitar, and you know the sound. So yeah. That's how you can delay it, but right. It's really fast. So we have one sample to calculate everything. So yeah, and it's running with 88.2 kilohertz sampling rate, so it's really fast. The next one is called stereo transformer. That one is transformer has nothing to do with an audio transformer, but it transforms the audio signal. That's also something something that's not existing already. So it's not an emulation of something. It's all done in sidechain. There will be generated a mid signal and also a side signal by adding the signal and also building the difference. Both will be processed separately, and at the end they are not summed together, but the side control voltage is subtracted from the mid signal. Before you listen to it and you realize what it's doing, we have to think about it. What it's doing, we have only a signal that's coming from the center. So typically some house track or some techno track, first the drums are coming. You compress really heavily, and really strong. It generates only a control voltage here in this chain, and since it's coming from the center, no control voltage here. Then some other instruments will set in, some synth. Then it will start generating some control voltage here, and that will reduce the compression. So when just the drums are coming, you can compress hard, and then when the rest is starting, the compression will go down a little bit, so it will not compress that heavily. And you can run the plugin that controls the device. You can run multiple of them. So, for example, you have your drum track or your overhead track. You freeze it, then it will keep your plugin settings. Open another one on another track, also freeze it. And when you have to go back, you see what setting have you used. It can restore your setting on that specific track.
This has a stereo out? This is a stereo processor or no?
It's a stereo, but the plugin is only to control it.
Right.
The next one is called Varitube Compressor for a reason because we had the previous version was just pure analog. The audio path is still the same, so they sound the same when you just connect it without compression. And then because people wanted to upgrade from their previous version to the new one, we made a program that is has the character of the previous version. So the sidechain in that one is done fully analog, and we emulate this one so you can use your same settings from the previous version. The next one is also something we took off from existing hardware from our recording channel. It's called Vocal Leveler. It has the compressor here, and it's put on auto. The goal is with that program is to have vocals that are leveled out by just like you do it on a fader. And the trick we are doing is we have two sidechains. If you have a really fast setting on your vocals, really fast attack, really fast release, then of course you can cancel out every change in the volume really fast, and also when some plopping or whatever is coming in, or some loud things, then of course it's cancelled out and goes back without pumping. But you end up with really lifeless and really compressed signals, so it's not really what you want, unless you want it sound aggressive or whatever. And when you put it on slow settings, then of course it will keep your liveness in the signal, but whenever a plop appears, then you all know this from old cassette recorders, then it will go down the level, it will pump really heavily, and then it goes back. And so we decided to have both. You have one sidechain running really slow and cancel out really nicely all the different levels of the vocals, and have a second sidechain running in parallel with really fast settings. And then at the end there's some logic behind. It's not, we don't mix the both together. There's some logic that decides which to use. Normally it uses the slower one, and then when something to compress really fast comes in, it switches to the faster sidechain, and after that it immediately switches back to the slower one. So at the end, that switching back and forth happens, not that you have half of a part of the heavily compressed signal in it, or half of the part of the pumping in it. Because of that switching, the slower one is not affected by that because of the slow attack time. And so at the end you hear it. You see that it's really, it has the microdynamic still in it, but loud parts are really, really compressed. And when you hear the vocals, for example, solo, you think, oh, it's not compressed at all. But when you put the music on it, then you can hear that it really sits nicely on level. It's not too loud, not too not go down in the music. You only recognize how good it's compressed when you have the music for comparison. So the next one is, maybe someone can already guess what it's emulating. And
No idea.
okay. Next one is called Optical Compressor. And that one is, for example, also used to keep your vocals steady on a level, but it works differently and also sounds a little bit different. And yeah, that one emulates an LA to A.
No.
And optical compressors are something unique because they are using this light-dependent resistor to change the volume of the sound. And in the LA to A, you have this T4, that's the light-dependent resistor, and on the other side you have
A light bulb.
no, that's not a light. It's a foil that is lighting. It's like your night light for your children, and that will shine to the light-dependent resistors, and you can see here that's the schematic, and it will change the volume. And because of how this light-dependent resistor works, it has some special character. For example, that one is not really fast. It's slow in audio dimensions, and it also when light shines on it, it works in a few milliseconds, and when the light is going away, it takes some time to restore the value of that. And so that's why optical compressors are typically really slow. So they are not really fast, and they also have something that called memory effect. It's not that the release time of that resistor is constant, but it changes how long the light is shining on it. So the longer you compress, the longer the release time will be at the end. And sounds strange, but it works really nice on audio signals. That's why the compression is really famous. Actually, another downside of using a light-dependent resistor is that you cannot change the attack and release time. And there are optical compressors where you can change the timing, but the trick is they actually don't change the timing. They select really fast resistors and make them slower by electronic. So, but by making them slower, you lose that light-dependent release time. So because you put a capacitor parallel to it, and then you have the release timing of a capacitor dominating, and not the release timing of that resistor. So
in your digital circuitry, how are you?
Yeah, we emulated behavior with some formulas, and that's why we are able to change the timing, but to keep that character. So you still have this release time that depends on how long you compress, but you can adjust the timing. Great. So when you put both attack and release to 5, then you have the typical timing of an LA to A. But you can, if you want to, you can make it really slower or faster, whatever you want. And one thing what I really like with the LA to A, not with the original one, but when you use a compressor, especially a slower one, and put it on drums, you can make it really swing. When you adjust the timing, that it's on every beat, and the compressor goes up and down to that beat, it gives a really nice extra feel on it. You can, it works great with optical compressors, but you cannot adjust it on an LA to A. You can be happy to have it exactly on the beat, or you can say the drummer, please play it to the compressor. But you cannot do this. Or you have a bunch of different T4 modules and change it on the compressor. But when you, for example, you have a snare track and you want not only that plop at the beginning, also that, I call it swing, that the compressor swings with the music, then it gives a really nice feeling. Here you see some timing of a typical light-dependent resistor, 6 milliseconds attack time and 1.5 seconds. but it depends also on how you use it. So that means that it goes back to in 1.5 seconds, and you see here's 63 of the original values. So when you use it in a different way, it can be faster. So you don't depend on go back to 100 kilo ohm, for example. Okay, the next one is called drum smasher, and also an emulation of something existing.
No idea.
No. The image is not correct because it emulates pressing all buttons in. You end up with something really unique timing-wise and also compression curve-wise. So at the end, it can happen that you over-compress. So it's getting louder on the input and it's getting lower on the output. It will not put an 1176 out of business because it has a different sound on its own. So it's a transistor compressor. It has a different transformer in it. So don't expect the Schwerkraftmaschine sound as a replacement of that unit. And here you can see a track that's compressed, and you see that you still have sometimes transients coming through, but it's also dense. The next one is called classical Vermu, and obviously it's an emulation of the Fairchild compressor. Here you can see a typical signal path, and when you compare that to what I showed you before, you can see also input transformers, the Vermu tube, interstage. There's no transformer here, but typically it's a transformer, output stage, output transformer, and this simple circuit is the sidechain of a Vermu compressor. You see that's a diode, it's rectified, and then that's the timing. The Schwerkraftmaschine, at first I wanted to invent something new, and of course we did some emulations, but the main point is not to emulate something. It's not to replace all other gear, it's to have different characters you can use. And of course at the end, putting the classical Vermu, the Schwerkraftmaschine with classical Vermu on the track, it sounds different to a Fairchild compressor, and it's not the point to replace one with the other. It's just to have a variation in how it sounds. The next one, also give a little bit hint. It's called chart analysis. A little bit about, as you already mentioned, a little bit about compression, of the history of compression. The thing is, you need something for a compressor, you need something to regulate the audio signal. And over the time, engineers developed how to do this. They started with a tube, with the remote cut-off tube, but it's also used in the Schwerkraftmaschine. So you can apply a voltage to a tube, and it changes the gain of the tube. And that's a nice thing because you can regulate the volume. It's a nice idea, but as with tubes, we love tubes because of the character. But back in the days, everything was tube, and that was too much. So you record with a tube microphone through a tube preamp on a tube tape machine, running it back to a tube desk, and hear it on your tube speaker, running it back on a tube tape to record it or put it on vinyl. And at the end, they had so many tubes in it that they don't wanted the distortion. They wanted really clean. And actually, the U47 was also advertised as sounding really clean, and at that point, so that was a selling point to have some tube equipment really clean. And then they invented the transistor. They were happy not to have the tubes anymore, not all the heat, not so many power, and also size. And if you think about a walkie-talkie with tubes in a car, then every regulation device has its cons and pros. So, for example, transistors, they work nicely, but they cannot handle high levels. So that's why the 1176 is really noisy, because you have to turn the level down, then compress it with the fat, turn the level up. And everyone knows turning the level up will also amplify the noise. That's why they made a second version, low noise version. But at the end, it gives distortion, and when it compresses too heavily, and also when you don't compress that much, then it's noisy. So today we want distortion because we want character. We have digital. If you don't want to have character, we can use digital. We want distortion now, but back in the days, they don't want distortion. They were happy when it's clean, when they have high frequency in it. They came up with different ideas, and everything worked good in a way and not good in a way. And then they came up with something called the VCA. It's a chip and with many transistors in it. Because they were able to put all the transistors in a small housing, they were able to come up with a schematic that works on a huge range. You use VCA when it was invented. SSL, for example, was started using it as faders, and that's how they get famous for it. And that was the first time to have a device that is able to handle to change the volume from minus 100 dB back to 0 dB without any downside. They also started to build compressors with it. And the special character about the SSL compressor and that VCA compressors is actually that they don't have a character, that they work like in an engineer's textbook, and they don't have any knee on its own. They just work as expected, and of course you can do that, but the VCA in itself has no character. And we have another mode that's called Deesser. And you have different Deesser types. You have the type that applies a filter on the audio path, and you have a Deesser that that the compressor only reacts on a different frequency range. Of course, we don't have any filter in the audio path. That's why we emulate the second one, and the sidechain filter acts as a filter. You can find the frequency you want to de-ess with that over the whole range, because it doesn't make sense to have a de-esser with a low cut or tilt EQ. On our website, every mode is also explained in text if you want to read it again. And also we have many audio demonstrations on YouTube. That's it.
Yay! Perfect. So thanks ever so much. Hope you enjoyed that. I know it's super, super long. Big fan of Michael, big fan of this technology. I love the fact that so many people are embracing this. It's not just limited to the companies we're talking about. Please let us know about more. We want to talk to more of them as well. We love talking about hardware. We love talking about plugins, and we really love talking about plugins that control hardware and are fully recallable. This is a great world that we live in. Thank you for technology. It's marvelous. Have a wonderful time recording and mixing. Please leave a bunch of comments and questions below, whether it be related to what we talked about here or future Fact Friday questions. I love reading them. I love answering them. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing and mastering and all the other good stuff.